Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of Happy Chirp. Today I have with me Halimah Tariq, who happens to be a filmmaker and lawyer by profession. She also the outreach coordinator for ConnectHER. Now, all of these things we will get into and talk about in detail. What has her work been and what has led to all of this work that she has been doing. So Halimah, how are you?
I'm good, Hamna. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I've never had a lawyer on the show before.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I mean, I feel really honored that I'm the first one.
I've always wanted to have, someone from that side as well. Because idea ये है कि हर field से, हर space से हम लड़कियों को बुलाएं. But so what we'll do is, and generally what we do is that we go all the way back into, how you grew up and what your life was like. So my first question to you would be, where were you born and raised?
I was born here in Islamabad, born and bred in Islamabad, raised here, schooling, everything. I mean, Islamabad has been my home from the beginning till now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. And where did you get your education from, most of it?
All of it has been based over here. I mean, I think I always sort of thought at some point, like maybe for college, I assumed that, I would go abroad and that's when, life will start. That's going to be the transitioning moment, because a lot of us feel that, bahar jaake, then we're going to university karke, when we start living our life. But that didn't really happen. I stayed on over here and I did my law degree. I did my LLB. And I just decided that, this is kind of where I'm going to be. So, yeah.
Always been here, want to stay here.
Yeah, definitely. And people find that so strange that, you don't want to think about moving at some point. But I mean, I've always... I don't know. It's just that I've always found Pakistan, in particular Islamabad, my home. I'm not even to the point that I don't even want to move to Lahore or Karachi. It's just Islamabad.
Yeah, so like you're very comfortable.
Very much. Like I can't imagine myself anywhere else.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. So while you were growing up, what is it that did you ever see yourself working? Because a lot of girls, like while growing up, शायद उनकी लाइफ में इतने रोल मॉडल्स नहीं होते हैं उन्होंने some women just don't see themselves doing really anything. They're just like, oh, bas shaadi karni hai type. Did you always see yourself doing something, or and if you did, then what was it that you wanted to be? कि अच्छा मैंने बड़े होकर ये बनना है.
From the beginning, I always, I think, wanted to work. Like I'd always seen my mother, and she had always kept herself busy, whether it was, working, or whether it was, doing a course, or whether it was when she had kids, she had always kept herself busy. And seeing her, and she had always drilled that into me that, have a goal, work for it, have a goal, but don't just aimlessly. Your life cannot be aimless. Always have a purpose. And I think that was one of the reasons that I kind of thought that, okay, this is something, I need to do something. And growing up, I had a lot of lawyers in my family. So I was surrounded by a lot of, lawyers, and I would see them. And I don't know, I mean, I suppose that had one of the reasons why it sort of pushed me in the direction of, wanting to do law. But my mother, she would always kind of tell me that whatever profession you kind of pick, make sure that it has a selfless aspect to it. So do something that, of course, there's the money and the earning and, I want to do this and I want to become that, but always have something selfless in it. And I think that was I kind of grabbed on to the whole idea of being a lawyer, because I thought, oh, there are all these people around me who are doing law. And of course, being a lawyer, I mean, the challenge of it. And then at the same time, it's kind of, you're given that opportunity to help people. You're given that opportunity to sort of, uncover the truth. And so these, a few of these elements really spoke to me. And I thought, okay, this is the purpose, this is the job, and this is the purpose that it has. And I want to sort of do that.
Okay. When was this that you...
This is when I was growing up, like while I think 11, 12, 13 years old, and I started seeing this and started picking up on that. So,
so it wasn't for you like अच्छा बचपन में कुछ सोचा था and then ended up doing law. So
no,
there was something
there was definitely knew. I would definitely say that I had seen that. Seeing it had kind of made it very real for me. So I thought, this is the direction I want to go into.
Yeah, and then when you finally started doing law and learning about it, what do you feel about the subject in general?
So like I said, like I just mentioned, that I picked up law because I kind of, so I, throughout, while growing up, and I'm sure you also noticed it, that you must have noticed it, that there are lots of subjects around us that don't kind of get that sort of traction, and they don't, and especially in regards to women. You see things, and I used to see a lot of things while growing up because my mother would be very involved in social work, and I used to think that, okay, this subject hasn't gotten, it's not getting the, it should be highlighted in a particular way. The subject is not being talked about enough, and I kind of, in my mind, I thought that being a lawyer, I'll fill that gap in. I'll be the one to do it. I'll be that medium in which to help people in that way. And it seemed very clear cut for me. Okay, ye masla hai, I will go ahead and I will be that medium, and I will be able to.
You
help
had a
people.
problem in your head that you wanted to solve with this. Huh.
I just thought that this gap is going to be filled, and I will be the one to fill it, and this profession is going to help me fill it. And that's the mindset that I had when I went into it. But it wasn't like that for me at all when I got into it, and I realized it's very different. It's not like that at all.
What do you mean by that?
I think one of the main reasons is that that's, I think, why I was drawn to documentary filmmaking in particular, because it sort of pushes for, I think, inadvertently pushes or just instigates sort of social activism, and that's what I felt was sort of missing, and I felt that I was going into this profession with that idea that I will be able to fill this gap in, to address these issues, to help these people in a particular way. But it's not, nothing is very clear cut, and what I was looking for was not there, and I sort of found it in a different way, and that's kind of what drew me towards a different profession, area.
That's interesting, because a lot of the times hota ye hai ke like life or the world sort of presents you with certain number of options, and you think that, but aapke andar, like I said, that there was a problem in your head that you wanted to solve, and a lot of the times you think that ye jo options hain, inme se this is the one that can help me solve this problem. So you don't, so for some people it's very clear कि मैंने lawyer बनना है क्योंकि मैंने lawyer बनना है, या मैंने doctor बनना है क्योंकि मैंने doctor बनना है.
Exactly.
But for a lot of people it's not that profession, it's not that label, it's the thing inside them that they want to do, or the impact they want to create, or the problem they want to solve. And now it's not necessary कि जो आपको given options हैं, you are able to do that with that. A lot of the times it's like a discovery during your normal life. You're just like, oh no, the problem that I'm trying to solve, or the thing that actually bothers me that I want to fix, there's this way to sort of do that. So in my understanding, what you actually wanted to do, you found कि अच्छा, through documentary or filmmaking you can address
to achieve that.
And I think wahin se aapki wo actual satisfaction aati hai of the work that you're doing, that because you actually feel, okay, the impact that I wanted to create is actually here. So did you acha, Pakistan mein they say कि बड़ा मुश्किल है एक लड़की के लिए लॉयर बनना, क्योंकि बनना तो नहीं है सच, बट उसको परस्यू करना, बिकॉज वो कचहरी में बैठना पड़ता है, एंड इट्स ऑल लाइक आई डोंट नो, मैं कभी नहीं बैठी. So it's a very intimidating environment, and it's very difficult and competitive. And मतलब मेरे आगे पीछे जो फ्रेंड्स हैं और लोग थे जो lawyers बने, a lot of the women sort of, they didn't then end up pursuing that field उस तरह से because of these things. What are your thoughts on that? ऐसा है?
If it's difficult in the field itself of being a lawyer, and I mean, definitely, I think so, in the sense that the country that we're in, the way it is, our surrounding, it is a man's world, and especially over here, because I feel like women have to fight a little harder to get where they need to be, especially whether it's being a lawyer, whether whatever field it is. And definitely, like, I've, as in kacheri jaake, you sort of understand, and you see the surrounding, and then like one of the first I remember reactions was when I was telling, when I would tell people that I've done my law, and I'm a lawyer, they'd be like, how do you go to the kacheri? How does that feel? What is that like? But and then you start realizing that, everyone is sort of sharing that view that this is so difficult. Like, how do you manage with that? But, and then at the end of the day, when, when I started practicing, so I practiced for around 2 years, and that was kind of like during that time I was constantly making films. And before I graduated, actually, I made my first film and I sent it in. And so through that, after I was practicing, and then slowly it kind of started hitting me that, okay, this, and I never felt that this was too challenging or law was too challenging or it's not for women. And that was never the reason why I didn't keep going ahead with it. It was just something that didn't, connect with me as much. So, to answer your question, I do feel that, as far as women being in that environment, it is a little, intimidating and a little daunting, because that environment isn't very sort of female friendly. But I suppose, for women who are currently practicing it, because I'm not, I think they've just managed to kind of break through that and keep going forward with that. But I do think that it is, it's not easy. It really isn't.
Yeah, and
from the experience that I've had, I remember feeling that, at that point that, even when I would go to the kacheri, I'd think, oh, wow, this is not easy. But then there are women who are like doing it every day, and they're doing an amazing job at it. So, it's kind of like how you keep
अगर
going.
आपने करना हो तो आप कर भी सकते हो. It's not, but of course, like, it's not a very female friendly उस तरह से.
No, I don't, yeah.
Yeah, I think actually, like, हमारे country में कोई भी आप space उठा लें, courts, कचहरीज, पुलिस स्टेशंस, औरतों का जाना वहाँ पे in those environments, it's very not friendly and very intimidating for
it is. I went to going to the police station. I remember thinking, so the first time I went there, I remember seeing the police station, the surrounding, and thinking, how do women come here by themselves, and how do they do it? Because I walked in and I was on my own, and I don't know, I'm forgetting who came afterwards, but just waiting over there by yourself, I was just, that feeling was just, you don't feel confident and kind of like, I'm here to kind of file this case, so I'm here to do you're just a bit like, oh my God, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
So it is, I suppose it's a matter of getting used to, but that first, I think it's a little more, it's not like, when you're a man, you're just going to walk in and own it. It's a bit like, okay, you're walking in and you just first have to kind of get in your element, gather the confidence. It takes longer a bit, I think. And some women can do it, like, in a snap, they're in it. But for some, I feel like it does take longer for most of us.
Yeah, I think the
too.
more sheltered you are, the more obviously difficult it is, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah,
and I feel like a lot of us are very sheltered, especially because of how we've grown up and how our parents have raised us, and where we live also. Pakistan, it's a developing country, and it's sort of like a lot of us have that very sheltered environment, and there's some that don't. Like I myself have grown up in a very sheltered environment, I think. And although people automatically assume that, oh, you make films and it was probably so different for you, but it really wasn't. It's not. My parents were not the most, ye karne to karo, you're free to do whatever you want. It was sort of like, I had restrictions, and in those restrictions, I realized that how I can make it work for myself. And, and I suppose those restrictions are there not for any reason, but mainly for our protection.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, one of the main things that we sort of, overlook, because we don't understand why they're there. We think that, but a lot of the reasons why our parents are restricting us from certain things, because they themselves are very scared, and they themselves are worried for us and our protection.
It's very understandable that they protect us, because the environment is not very safe. But do you think because we have, हमें protection दी जाती है और shelter दिया जाता है, it has sort of come in the way of our empowerment?
I definitely think so.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's, I say it in the sense that I feel that because when our parents were growing up, and the time that our parents grew up in, and the time that we are in right now, it's very different. Okay, to say something like our time, ye hua tha, ye wo, it's very different, because you see now the situation is that girls need to learn how to be very independent. They need to know how to stand on their own feet. Back then, I think it was kind of like our parents, and I feel like the way they adapted and the way sort of they the way they got married and the way they raised us, it was sort of very different. And I don't think we can, go in that being in that same situation. I don't think we would be able to adjust, because we want more. We want to fight more. We want to be more independent. We want to, we want that our voice should be out there more. And I think a lot of the mindset is, for many people, it's okay when girls are growing up, it's sort of like from one household, they sort of go into another household. So they never understand who they are. So they never explore that, who are they? Because from our parents telling us,
it's dictated by, like,
of course,
our parents in society.
Exactly.
And everyone. Yeah.
From one situation, you have your parents kind of guiding you, telling you, okay, this is how you need to be, this is how you don't. And then straight off the bat, from there, they're married into another household, and then you have your husband and your in-laws. So where is that portion of your life where you are independent and you realize who you are? So you never really know who you are for a lot of, so because of that sheltered kind of like we're being grown up, or we're being groomed in a particular way, we sort of don't, a lot of girls don't get that chance to understand who they are, their independence or their empowerment, which is so important, I think. And it's missed out on, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I just feel like वही बात है कि I understand the protection aspect of it, but if we are constantly protected, then how will we step out and you just normalize the fact कि आप जितना किसी चीज़ को टैबू करते हो या छुपा के रखते हो, बंद करके रखते हो, उतना वो नॉर्मलाइज नहीं होती. You can never normalize women walking on streets in Pakistan if you continue to protect them and say, listen, I'll go get it for you.
बिल्कुल 100%.
So,
I agree with
which
100%.
makes sense in the sense that they're doing it to protect you.
Yeah.
But if we are not going to get out there, it's never going to be normalized. If it's never going to be normalized, we're never going to achieve that independence and sort of like empowerment कि आप यहाँ ना जाएं, आप ये ना कर दें, आपका भाई आपके लिए कर देगा, आपके अब्बू कर देंगे, आपका शौहर कर देगा, you don't need to do this, but which is very sweet, but what it's more damaging than it is sweet, because it is it's stopping us from a lot of learning, a lot of exposure, a lot of things that we need to be able to learn to do by ourselves.
100%.
And we don't, obviously we don't end up doing that. We don't end up learning those things. And that is the sheltering aspect, जिसमें फिर होता है कि आप जितना भी like on the surface empowered हो जाओ, या जितना भी आपको education हो जाए, if you haven't done the real deal in this country, you're not truly empowered. I think true empowerment or true independence is when you can get out there and do everything and anything. And it's a chicken and egg, right? जब तक environment नहीं बदलेगा हमें protect करते रहेंगे, लेकिन हमें अगर protect करते रहेंगे तो environment नहीं बदलेगा. So it's just like,
it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. Where do you start? So yeah, I thought, when you said कि हम sheltered environment में होते हैं और फिर जब ऐसी जगहों पे जाते हैं, तो this thought sort of came to my head, like especially when I think about my mother. I've spoken about my mother a lot of times on this podcast as well. She's like, she can go anywhere and she can do anything and everything. कहीं पर भी ले जाओ वो कर लेंगे.
That's like my mom. Exactly.
And like she lost her husband. She doesn't have that support system उस तरह से. और वो सब कुछ करती हैं, and the fact that nobody was there to protect her and shelter her in a lot of things, so like, and when my dad was even there, so he made sure that he sort of empowered her to do certain things and teach her about certain things, which worked out great because eventually he wasn't there, and then she had to do all of these things herself. But wahi baat hai, so we need the mindset of our men in our society to change, where because they can't sort of push us into this unsafe environment. We need them to help us.
Yeah, they need to be the ones to champion us.
Yes, jao karo, we're here. Jao karo, we're here. And then eventually, we can be able to do these things on our own, rather than telling us कि तुम बिल्कुल भी मत करो, हम कर लेते हैं.
That's ridiculous. And because the fact is that a point, which is I have this conversation with my dad too, and I tell him, I say, the fact is that right now, even when you protect me or you say don't do this, or something as simple as, for example, रात को नहीं जाना या वो नहीं करना, I try telling him that eventually when girls do get married, or because and then you have no idea what's happening. Okay, supposing if you have to get something from the grocery store, or she has to go somewhere, or supposing but when I get married, or if I have to do something, you won't know. I'll just have to go and get it. But that feeling, because you've constantly protected me and told me, don't step out at night, don't do this, so I will be a little hesitant when the time comes that I have to do it on my own. Isn't it better that I do go through these experiences and have these in my own household, where my parents are here and they're, but I should not wait that I will go through this later. Everything should happen now, so that when the time comes, I've gone through these experiences and I am independent. I can understand how to handle myself in every situation, because you aren't prepared of what will happen or what, life kind of has for you. And if your parents don't prepare you for every possible situation, then you're lost when the time comes. And that's, I think, one's biggest fear. And that is, to be honest, one of my fears, that, what if I don't know how to handle myself because I didn't experience this, in the household with my parents. And I think my mom really understands this now more than ever. I think now when we're growing up, but now that I've grown up now, she sees that, like, and she does have, she does say that, there are a lot of times that I feel I, should have been like, it doesn't matter. But I felt that, no, I felt I needed to protect you more. And then I kind of draw comparisons with my brother, and I kind of go like, oh, but you let him do that and you didn't let me do that.
Yeah.
So
I think I get it. Like, as a mom, I have a baby of my own. So as a mom, I understand the need to, like, always protect your offspring.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's not the best thing for them. You can tell them to, like you said, कि आप उनको पहले से, like, while they're with you, you teach them these things, you train them while that safety net exists. Why would you put them in a situation where it happens to them?
Yeah.
And they have to do it for the first time or figure it out without that safety net, or
you hear these stories of girls who've gone through, like terrible marriages or terrible experiences, and then they just sort of talk about how they've had to handle themselves for the first, or just how they've had to handle small situations, or even, for the first time, and how it was like them to stand on their feet, or maybe doing their first job, or just kind of like never having earned anything, or never having worked, and then finally after they get married or after that experience, they worked first because they've had to stand up on their feet. So these experiences should have sort of happened before, so that if God forbid a situation like that happens, girls
you're already ready for it.
We can do it. We've done it before. We can do it. No problem. No, not that the world is crashing, or we cannot, get out of the situation because we don't know what to do. We know nothing better. It should never be like we know nothing better. It should be we know every situation and we can handle it. So if this doesn't work, doesn't matter. We've done that. We can do that too.
Yeah, and it's very small things. It's as simple as taking your daughter to the mechanic.
Yeah.
Not like ले जाए ना आप साथ ले जाए. At least start introducing them to environments that may be challenging for them at some point in the future, or where they have to be, because कुछ भी हो सकता है. आपकी गाड़ी को कुछ हो सकता है. You could be alone, you could be stranded, and you should be able to be familiar to environments that could be difficult to navigate in the future.
Definitely.
So it's a very small example, but you get what I'm trying to say.
It shouldn't be from, running to our parents for help to running to our husband for help. It should be, there should be a moment in which we can be like, we can do it ourselves. Yeah. We don't need anyone. We can handle it also. Or, that should be an option. But for girls, for some reason, it's either, you call your parents, or you call your husband, or you call your brother. What about us as independent entities? Can we should be able to be like, okay, no, we can handle it. We can do it.
Yeah.
So that, definitely in that sense, I think it's important to understand, independence, and understand how not being too sheltered, does help you, or does
good
facilitate
for your
you.
daughters.
Yeah, it does.
It's good for them. Yeah. Okay. So, where did you do your LLB from?
From University of external degree from TILS,
external degree. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what would that make? Did you do it like in a private capacity, or you went to?
I went to university. I went to TILS, which is the Institute of Legal Study.
Yeah. How is TILS?
It's fine. It's good. It's obviously you're not getting the experience of a university level experience, and you're getting one of when you're doing an external degree and you do it from one of these centers, it's very different. The experience is different, and obviously after doing your A levels and coming out of like a school like private or Frobels, so at once you sort of everything becomes a lot smaller because it's in a house, and it's very different in that sense. But it's sort of to the point that it's not something that I found that oh my God, this is such a big change, or it was just something that I thought, okay, it's it's fine. I mean, I'm getting a good degree out of it, and this is something I want to do. So, it was good. It was fine.
Okay. And then straight out of bachelor's, what did you do?
So when I was in my final year, I had kind of always been into filming and, recreational filming. And when I was in my final year, like these were my final law exams, I created my first proper documentary, like a short feature, and I submitted that into a festival. And this festival was it was a festival that was Harvard collaborated. So I thought, okay, I submitted it in and I had to give my exams, and then I got selected and they invited me to Harvard. So this was like in the last, I think this was April, May, like papers, finals, and this was it. It was sort of make or break. You're becoming a lawyer. And then I got an invitation, and they said, come for the festival and you're in the top 5 and we will sort of, we've got everything covered for you, your stay. And so I had kind of like, in that moment, I kind of thought, okay, I want to, I need to give my law papers and this is it. If I mess this up, then I mess this up. My dad he had very specifically said, if you mess these up, that is it. I'm not going to give you're not giving any more retakes, no referrals, nothing. This is it. But my mom was like, look, if this is something you're really interested in and this is your passion and you really are serious about this, then, and they're calling you, then go to Harvard and this is what you should, go and, that's an experience of a lifetime. So I went and so that's kind of like where it sort of started from. And then when I graduated from law, I practiced, but I was constantly sort of making films on the side and constantly trying to give it, like as much time as I could. Dividing the time was very difficult because I would, being over there, then you'd be there from, like 9 to 6. And then I'd want to, make films and then I'd want to submit them. And then I'd want to, because when you're making films, you have to travel to different cities. You have to, get stories out. So dividing that time was becoming more and more difficult. And then I thought, if I want to do this, then I need to be serious about this. And I need to sort of pause this and go in that direction. And that's kind of how, out of bachelor, sort of the direction I went into.
Okay. So, so I want to understand, so filmmaking it requires a lot of these other skills, obviously production skills and technical skills. And then there's this aspect of storytelling and everything.
Yeah.
Like during your law degree or during growing up, how did you learn those skills? Did you, was it just completely self-taught or just, taking a camera, using it completely, naivety में जो बंदा करता है एक passion एक hobby के साथ करता है, or was it something that you attended some workshops or you took some courses कि अच्छा I also want to explore this? How did you?
So I basically I'm completely self-taught. I was very interested when I was younger, in filming. I think capturing every moment on camera, trying to understand if they, if someone was telling a story, if someone was talking about something, or someone was just telling their experience, I'd always be like, wait, let me get the camera for that. And then just sort of, I just wanted to, it was just sort of like, it started off with, wanting to talk to people and just kind of asking questions and sort of understanding what was happening, and then wanting to record every single moment in a way that I could sort of put it together and piece it together and make something out of it. And then I started kind of, I think when someone is very passionate about something, you start kind of picking up different things yourself. And like I would kind of see, when people would talk, or when I would see a film, or if I would watch a documentary, I would sort of start thinking, what if this was cut like this? What if this was edited like this? What if this was put like this? Maybe the story should be like this. Like automatically, it's not that I would even sort of, I would sit and study about it. It would just sort of, these thoughts would just sort of come automatically. And then I would think, okay, if I make a film, or if I make something, I'm going to do it like this. Or while driving or while moving, I'd be like, oh, this is such a nice, shot. Or, oh, I would just kind of start observing things in a different way. And then I started incorporating that into the films that I'd be making. And I started noticing that, a lot of the things that I was seeing around me and picking up, I was sort of, polishing them up and putting them forward in films that I wanted to create or films I was creating. So, I was self-taught, and like all the skills I kind of learned on my own and picked up on my own.
Did you ever then pursue any academics in this? Yeah,
no, okay. I haven't.
And do you want to? Do you plan to?
academics, I mean, I don't know about that, but I do want to sort of, I feel like I have a lot to learn.
Yeah,
like I have a lot to learn. Like I would want, I mean, being sort of trained by people in their profession, because practically I think people learn a lot, and as opposed to when you're studying it out, that's very
100%,
different.
yeah.
So I mean, being in an environment where you're surrounded by professionals and getting maybe that kind of training, because I don't think I'm at this point I would say, oh, I'm perfect in every. I'm not. I mean, I'm there's a lot of work I still need to do. I've come to a point, I've come a long way, I would say that, but I'm nowhere close to where I want to be. And I think that requires a lot more, training and being surrounded by professionals or people in that field who can kind of guide you and tell you this is what you're doing right and this is what you're doing wrong, So yeah, in that sense, I would want sort of training or something.
Okay. So through filmmaking, or when you first, decided to make films, not even decided, but sort of just started making films, I feel like under say people who want to make films, they want to tell stories, of course.
Yeah.
So what were the kind of stories that compelled you to do this?
So which stories compelled me, or which situation or moment maybe?
Either ways, yes.
So there were, I think, as far as what sort of got me into social activism as far as filming is concerned, because all the stories that I've made, the films that I've made, they're very sort of women centric, and they're very sort of pushing for social activism in regards to women. And I think I think that there were a few sort of moments where I kind of thought, oh, this is something that this is a field that is sort of it connected with me a lot more. And one of the, I think, situations were that when I made a short feature for a school competition, and when I submitted it in, and when others kind of saw it and they viewed it, I kind of realized that the topic that I had covered, because it was about education and poverty and child labor. And what I was noticing was that how after people were watching it, everyone was sort of having open conversations about these issues. And it kind of made me realize that's pretty powerful. Like look at the power of visual aid, look at what it's doing. And then also, other than that, like I mentioned before, my mom, she was very much into social work. So I would always be with her all the time. I mean, wherever she would go, whatever she'd be doing, I would sort of be with her in the front. And I remember in particular after I think it was the October 8th earthquake, and there were lots of tent camps that were set up. I don't know if you remember. And we would go there for visitations, and we would spend hours over there. So my mother would be distributing provisions, and I was around 12 years old, and I would be sitting and talking to kids my age who had lost everything. They had lost their homes, they had lost their families. And I remember there was constantly this issue that, provisions come hai, visitations nahi hai, we need more people to help. And there was always this problem that there weren't that many people. And I remember thinking that the reason why this was so is because people lacked that connection, like the feeling that I had at that moment talking to these people. It sort of, and the connection that I was having being there, that was absent. So people weren't coming because they didn't have that. And I just kept thinking, I remember, how do I replicate this feeling and play it back for others so that they can also understand and feel what I'm feeling and understand the gravity of the situation and come forward and help. And I remember thinking that again and again, thinking, how can I do that? And it was, I think this, along with the fact that just sort of understanding that how powerful it is when you sort of record something and play it back for someone, record a story and show them and make them experience that moment without actually being present.
Yeah.
And it moves them to the point that, oh, we need to do something about it. And that, I think, in itself made me got me into the whole social activism aspect, and made me realize that this is actually something that can make a difference.
Oh,
So,
very interesting. So yeah, something you felt then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the moment, or just kind of, it's sort of, I think, a realization where you kind of realize that, this is how powerful something is, like when something is there, and when everyone is talking about it, like we all talk about films and media, and everyone gets moved by it, and everyone gets emotional by certain films. But if you were to just sort of take a step back and think, how can we use this in a way that can sort of push for positive change, you'll realize that it is media, film, visual, it's so powerful. It is so powerful. And
Agreed.
I don't think we even realize how much power that has at times.
Yeah, that's true. You're basically that's what people are spending a lot of their time doing, consuming media. And I think most of the ideas that they're forming in their head does come from what they consume,
what they watch,
whether it's through films or digital media or social media or whatever. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's so important as a filmmaker to have an understanding and realization of that power.
Yeah.
Because you can be a great filmmaker in terms of how you produce a film or even how you tell the story, but understanding कि अच्छा उस story की क्या powerful and what are the themes you can explore and the ideas you can put into people's heads, it's like it's a great power to have, and people who can realize that and use it for a positive impact, that can do a lot for an entire generation.
Definitely. Yeah. For
And
sure.
obviously when you create change into a certain generation, and then that means you're doing it for the future generations as well. So can you tell us about some of your films that you produced, and what were some of the stories that you've told through them?
So most of my films, I would say, they're very women-centric. They're about women in Pakistan. The stories about women in Pakistan who are achieving, doing extraordinary things, breaking barriers. So from stories that are in regards to, acid attack survivors, female acid attack survivors, to the first female cartoonist in Pakistan, to women fighting for their legal rights, and even women who are, female coaches who are training Special Olympic athletes. So there's like a wide range of stories I've covered, and they've all been very women-centric, and the stories that, their stories and their experiences and what they've done.
Okay, so how does your family or your parents sort of feel about your switch in career and you pursuing this full time now?
So when I started, when I first started, I actually think a lot of people didn't take it very seriously when I started, and
I understand that,
because when I was in my early 20s, like 20s actually, getting into filmmaking, being like a 20-year-old and getting into filmmaking, or it was sort of getting into film, actually, it's very daunting, because people around you they don't take you a lot of people, like most people, didn't take me seriously. But and my father was very sort of like, you want to do law, this is the direction you're going in, what is happening right now, why? And then I think in the beginning he thought this is just a hobby. It's going to be okay because it's a hobby, she's never going to do this,
I think that happens to most people that choose any sort of career in art, like anything that is artistic, whether that's, you want to be a content creator, you want to be a filmmaker, you want to be a sculptor, an artist, a singer, an actor. For I think most people, it's like, oh, ye side pe kar rahi hai, or hobby hai.
It's going to be fine, guys. It's just a hobby. Don't panic. That was my father's reaction a lot. So because when I graduated, when I finished my LLB, I think he was just, he was so happy about it. He's like, oh, meri beti vakeel hai, bas theek hai. And on the side, I was, I was already I was making films. Like I had started getting into that field, and he was kind of like, this is the direction you're going in, and it's very easy. Lawyer, simple, done. And I clearly didn't make it that simple. I was like, no, we need to shift this about and make this more complicated. But my mother was through. I think my mother wanted me to go, but when she saw that I was into it, she was like 100%, she sort of pushed me, and she's like, go in for this. This is what you're into. This is your passion. Because when she saw the first documentary I made, and, she was just like, this is what the effect or the change that you can bring with this, and what you are doing, you are never going to get that satisfaction, and you're never going to, and she said, there's hardly anyone out there doing this, and look at what you're doing, and this is all you. This is what you're feeling and your passion. And she kept telling me how many people get to do what they love and get to make a difference through that.
That's amazing to have that sort of voice in your life, especially from a parent.
Oh, I can't tell
It's everything.
you. Yeah, I can't tell you how amazing it is. That, like, literally, there are moments in which I feel that I am so lost that I just think I don't know what I'm doing. Because even now, like, even after all these years, in the middle of making a documentary or even getting a story out, or just being at the point that I don't even think I know what's happening, I kind of, I just literally talk to my mother and I go like, look, I don't know what's happening. I think I'm going to mess this up. And she goes like, no, you're not. You're not going to mess it up. And don't think that, because you're going to figure it out. And even if she doesn't believe that, the fact that she says that to me, it kind of makes me think I can do it. But every time I ask her, I tell her, you're being biased because I'm your daughter. And she says, no, I'm not. I'm not being biased. I tell you the truth if, because I'm your mother. But she was always from the beginning supported me to the point that when I would tell her that, no one is taking me serious, and I don't know what to do. And she was like, you know what? Just prove them wrong. You'll be fine. Just prove them wrong. And if you don't prove them wrong,
doesn't matter.
Who cares? They already think that they're not even taking you seriously. Wo kya notice karenge? They're not going to even matter. Yeah. But throughout, it was kind of like, and then when my dad would be like, I don't know, what is she doing? But she's, she's done law. My mom would be like, it doesn't matter. Just have faith and see what she does, because we need to just sort of support her. So she's been very sort of huge. Like when people ask me who's your inspiration, your female inspiration, female this, anything about which woman sort of made a difference in my life till date, it's like it's my mom. Like and like alhamdulillah, she's been like always there for me. And so that's kind of why I'm here, I would say, why I've even reached where I've reached.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I think for a lot of people, they really struggle to find that support from their parents in things that they really want to do. And sort of, they have to have that fight to open the minds of their parents.
That's so true.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty awesome to have that. So you mentioned that you are an outreach coordinator for ConnectHER. Can you tell us a bit about ConnectHER?
So ConnectHER is this nonprofit organization in Austin that champions stories of women and girls through film. And they are basically, and as an outreach coordinator, my aim is to sort of push that agenda forward in the sense like through film screenings or through workshops, through dialogue. And so one of my roles with ConnectHER is that I also, I carry out basic filmmaking workshops for students. And I kind of train them to submit to the ConnectHER Film Festival. So they basically make films on issues regarding women and girls, or maybe championing a cause that they're doing or something in their communities. And then by submitting, they have a chance in winning scholarships. And throughout the last few years, the students that I've trained, they've won scholarships from $2,500 to $3,000. And it's really sort of helped them with college. It's helped them with, and not only that, I think one of the main things that I've noticed is that so many of the students that I've trained, the perception of the world around them has changed. Like they see everything differently, and they kind of tell me that and they want to be more involved in social change and pushing forward for making a difference. And that is so fulfilling and rewarding to be able to see that, to be able to kind of that your work is kind of doing that in a way, because I had never thought that workshops is something that I would, I just thought, okay, I'm doing this, but this thing that's come out of it, it's making such a difference to, the generation.
Impact.
Yeah, exactly. It's a totally different impact, and it's so fulfilling in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's really amazing.
So you do most of these workshops here in Pakistan?
Yeah, in schools, online. So yeah.
Acha. So based on that, can you tell me, do you see a lot of people interested in filmmaking now?
Women or just
generally, from younger lot?
Yeah, a lot of people are into. I think now, especially because of social media and art, and there's so much. I think it was very different for us though when we were growing up. I don't think we had that many opportunities. I think there are more opportunities now.
I think it's not just opportunities, right? It's opportunities definitely, but also acceptance.
Yeah, except for sure. I think the right word would be acceptance, and would be people are more aware.
Yeah.
Awareness, there's a lot more awareness. There's a lot more sort of, you are learning a lot more things online. There's more, there are more platforms. And because of that, a lot of, like, I was surprised to see how many kids are interested in film, you know? And the thing is that women, as far as girls are concerned, so whenever, even in my classes though, the ratio is always that there are more, you know, more boys kind of want to, you know, and less girls. I think that that's kind of because, you know, even before I kind of mentioned this, but how women sort of feel that it's not really a field for girls. Or it's not, but it's not really, I think that's a big misconception, I feel.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that I guess filmmaking has a lot of to do with just being on ground and on you know field work. So I think उसमें वो बहुत सारे लोगों के लिए वहीं पे एक problem आ जाती है. And then I think another aspect is कि for some reason girls and women tend to stay away from technology.
Yeah.
It's like in their heads, this is not something that's for them or they can do. You know, camera work or editing or all of lighting and all of these things. So वो अब है और बहुत ज़्यादा change हो रहा है. But it's just that कि वो imagery ही इतनी normal नहीं है for women to be handling a lot of technology. जो I think in the past few years has changed a lot in the sense, and I think it especially came out with a lot of content creators and influencers where they started buying cameras, creating their own content, editing their वो उससे भी हुआ, and then filmmaking and all of these things happened as well. But like you know बहुत professional, और वो भी because those girls are doing it on their own terms as creators or वो, but आप professional environments में देखो या जहाँ पे like आपको किसी भी technical role में जब कहीं job application होगी या कोई वहाँ काम करते हुए नज़र आएगा, so it's usually man. Yeah. So this idea is very new for women to be dealing with all these things and doing
definitely.
These things. But वही बात है, the more you see it happen, the more it
normalizes it. Yeah, it does normalize it. I mean, I've seen that. You know what I keep telling a lot of people kind of ask me that, do you think that this is a career for women, and do you think that for girls, what advice would you give them? And I literally say the same thing, that you know, filmmaking itself, there's so many layers to it. I keep saying that women and girls, we need to take bolder steps. We need to be braver, and we need to take bolder steps. We need to kind of block out all the noise, and everyone constantly telling us it's not a field for women. It's not something women need to do. You know, it's not. We just need to block that out, and we just need to focus on, okay, you know, this is where our interest lies. Let's just move forward with it. It's the noise, and that's kind of stopped us from going forward in this field.
And believing that it's like, you know, noise, okay, you internalize it.
Yeah.
You doubt that, okay, you know, I think they're right. Like, I can't do this, so this is not for me. Like I said, कि जहाँ पर technology की बात होती है, कुछ भी technical field की बात होती है, we already assume, you know, आपकी conditioning है, आप वो imagery missing है, role models missing है. So you assume, sort of, most people assume, oh, this is not for me. This is not something that I can do or I can explore.
People will be like, oh, be a doctor, be an engineer. You've seen that before. You can do that, you know. So
it's as simple as, you know, if I put up a job opening for, you know, I say कि मुझे कोई काम कराना है on some artificial intelligence की technology or something, और वही लड़कियाँ जो शायद same courses लेके fast से graduate की हों computer science में, have that knowledge, a lot of them would just be like कि नहीं, like ये तो हम नहीं कर सकते. You know, they'll look for something more simpler, but even though that is something they can do, but it's just that they believe that they can't.
It's sort of been ingrained again and again.
Conditioning.
Yeah, literally, it is conditioning.
Yeah.
to the point that we're just like, oh, we don't have that many role models in this field, so let's go to the one that we do have role models, and that we've seen it happen 100 times, and that's something that we can relate to. And to be honest, I think even a lot of our parents even feel that way, that because everyone around them is sort of doing their kids are doing something like doctor, and like it's actually a pretty funny thing, because parents in particular, I think, like they don't know how to react when if you say something like, oh, मेरी बेटी actress है, मेरी बेटी filmmaker है, so it's kind of like they take a double take, like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us, why not a doctor, not a lawyer? And I think it's tougher when you say she was a lawyer and now she's not. And then they're like, what happened over there? Like, where? And then it's not even like, oh, tell us more. I think some of the reactions are like, what went wrong? Like, it's not.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah. So you see, I think the conditioning has a lot to do with it. And
I think even if there are girls out there who genuinely believe they can or want to, wahi baat hai again, that they have to then put up a fight at home a lot of the times. Because I'll give you an example. Especially for this podcast, I always wanted कि हमारी production aspect, editing aspect, सारा कुछ जो है वो female हो, because that is the whole point. कि besides the guests, like I wanted कि हमारी पूरी team ही female हो. But उसमें I did face that struggle where for not just क्योंकि हमारे we have other aspects in the company as well, so whoever is doing like videography, वो और भी videos shoot कर रहे हैं और edit कर रहे हैं. So if I hired a female for the podcast, then there are other shoots she has to do and commit to as well. So repeatedly, like, and then we had on the other side, we had some boys as well working on the same thing. So repeatedly we would struggle with the girls, because they would be like, oh no, I can't go there around this time, or I can't be out of my home after this time, or I need to be home by this hour. So, and even though they were so passionate about it, and even though they had the skill, उनकी limitations ना skill की हैं, ना passion की हैं, ना belief की हैं, वो society की हैं.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's sad and unfair.
It is. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So like, where they have to leave after a certain time, then obviously male counterparts are performing better because they don't have those limitations. So it's a very unfortunate thing. और वो हमारे होता है कि हम कोशिश करते हैं हम उनको हर एस्पेक्ट में support कर सकें, but then there's so many times like we're bound by the fact, no, this has to be shot at this time or in this place, and then it's just like, then who does that opportunity go to? And it's very sad that it is. And
then there are missed opportunities that could go to females, but they're missed out on simply because they have the skill, but they just don't have the surrounding or the society isn't agreeing with them to perform. So that becomes really tough.
And at the end of the day, these things are very personal as well. So when I have, for example, somebody in my team, a girl in my team, she comes up to me and she shares that मुझे अपने घर से ही restrictions हैं, मुझे ये problem है. So as another woman, I need to understand that. But when I understand that, that means that I have to give them that, leeway and be like, okay, then I guess you leave. But I have to get my work done. So then I give it to somebody, who can do that. Or वो अफसोस होता है because you want to give that opportunity. And you want to be like, no, like you should do this, get this opportunity. But then you're also like, listen, hey, you're a woman, don't you understand? And you're like, no, I understand as well. But so it's a very unfortunate thing. It's like आपकी fabric of society वो है, और जब तक वो in its roots change नहीं होता, unless this place becomes a safer environment for women,
just the constant fear.
And like somebody from like, I can't take the responsibility. If this is coming from their home or their family, I can't be like,
you have to just agree with it and go like, if they think if that's the step they're taking for your safety, then you have to be the one to go like, okay.
If I need my team to travel and their parents don't allow it, they're missing on the opportunity, and makes me really sad because I want to give that opportunity and exposure to the women in my team. That's what I want, but I can't be the one to make those decisions for them. It's their family.
That's so true. And the family needs to be the one to support them. They need to be the one that needs to be, okay, you go for take that step, and then you can be the one to facilitate them ahead, but you can't be the primary person taking that, so yeah, it's not easy like
and
that.
it is, and when you actually do as well, it's a huge responsibility. You're like, oh, okay, now I'm taking the girls.
I know.
Now I have to ensure that like they're safe, and everything is done like perfectly for them. So it's just it's a difficult navigation as someone who has to manage females in an office.
I can imagine.
Give them maximum opportunity, but also respect the values or their, I guess,
so basically
requirements.
Like support them in every way. And sometimes it's unfortunate because sometimes that support kind of ends up not allowing them to excel in how you want them to, but support is support.
I think the most important thing would be, like, I would say कि अगर वो ये हुआ कि never make that the reason for any sort of for not letting them sort of grow. What I mean, or sort of, I would say, stopping their promotions or stopping their pay grade. Like, of course, they didn't end up, traveling with me or doing this project with me or that project with me. But that was because of just that understanding that it was because of those social aspects and not, discriminating based on that. That's important. कि you understand कि अच्छा ये इस वजह से है. It's just not telling of their skill or what they can.
Not a lack of skill.
Yeah, what they can do. I guess you sort of then accommodate. And I think आप उनका role ही फिर ऐसे design करो where they do what needs to be required.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's how it has to be done, I guess, in situations like that.
Yeah. You can't be like, oh, you didn't do this with me or perform this here, so
now you have to suffer.
Yeah. So it's like, बिचारी फिर क्या करे? ये भी उसकी गलती नहीं है. Yeah. So I think वही बात है कि we need to be sensitive to their issues and their needs, and उस हिसाब से you
go forward with it.
Manage your expectations and their expectations as well. So currently, are there any films that you are working on?
So I just got done with a film recently, and it's basically I'll tell you a bit about it because it's kind of the one that's circulating. It's about the first woman in Mardan, and kind of the first woman in Mardan who who took a step to educate hearing and speech impaired girls.
Achha.
So it's called Awaz, A Life in Silence, and it's currently won at the Los Angeles Film Awards. It won at the Prague International Film Festival.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. It's also got selected at the Vancouver South Asian Film Festival and Atlanta International Film Festival, and it's on the festival circuit, so it's submitted to a lot of other ones, so fingers crossed. Let's hope and see where it's going with that. But that was the one that I recently finished, and it's kind of on the festival circuit right now.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that was
the story is very interesting. So it's a documentary.
Yeah, it's a documentary.
Yeah, very interesting. So, do you think exploring women-related stories in this country is another challenge on its own because, again, being on camera for women or them allowing...
And from both aspects, you're asking, like, for being the one behind the camera and being like filming women, like interviewing them also?
Yes, I'm talking about that aspect where, are they willing to be sharing their stories, be on camera, or like their families allowing them to do that? Because like you said, you talked about Mardan, right? Like it's one of the most, I would say, conservative when it comes to women. Like, KPK mein you don't see women outside.
Yeah.
So it's a thing. So is that a challenge?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is literally when people ask me, what are the challenges that you face? One of the challenges, the primary ones I feel, is the fact that because all the documentaries I've made have been on women in rural areas on very controversial topics. And a lot of the times what happens is that, and I've kind of faced this firsthand, is like everything is kind of set up, or we're sort of needing to, or we're about to conduct an interview, and then she kind of steps back and goes like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And in which situation it's very difficult. And you just kind of have to think, how do I sort of take it from here now? Because the thing about, especially when you're conducting interviews with these women, it's sort of like you are, ek to ye na that their constant fear is they're very hesitant, because for them it's kind of like log kya kahenge, what will this is sort of, is it agreeing with our cultural norms? Because at the end of the day, and then obviously I have to sort of talk to them and make them understand, that give them that understanding and that security and safety, that look, this is the effect that you coming forward and telling your story will have, and making them understand that. And then it doesn't just end there. And this is actually very important. I think that talking, especially when you're interviewing people, giving them that security, or giving them that understanding, or making them understand where you are coming from. It shouldn't just end with that documentary. It needs to go beyond. So you need to make them understand that, look, right now this is what's going to happen, and then after this, you're going to be safe, it's going to be fine, and then you're going to continue staying connected with that story. Because a lot of times, like I've even mentioned this before, that people make that documentary and then that's it, you're done, cut, khatam, no more, you have nothing to do with the person behind the camera, but a person who's giving the interview. But they're literally giving you a piece of their life.
Yes.
They are literally giving you their story. You need to respect that, and you need to tell that story with that in mind, that okay, they're giving me their story, and I need to sort of respect it and stay connected to them and to that story, and not just leave them or just think, oh, I've got what I need, that's it. So making them understand that is very important, because that gives them that security, and that, okay, fine, these aren't just people who've come to just steal a bit of my life and leave. And then and then obviously the challenge of making them, because at the end of the day, this is sort of, there's that reluctance, because you're making them relive experiences, very triggering experiences. So I've interviewed acid attack survivors. I've interviewed women who are currently trapped in bonded labor. Not that they have come out of it and they are free, who are in that situation. So you are telling them and making them relive it, and kind of asking them, okay, how do you feel? What is happening with you? What happened in the past? And they're all very triggering experiences. And a lot of them don't want to share that, and they don't want to think about that again and again. So that's a challenge, and getting that out is very tough, difficult. And it's difficult being that person to do it, because you're the last person who, it's very tough in the sense that I don't want to be the one sort of getting people, pulling those negative feelings out. But at times you kind of have to, so that people who are, experiencing that also, or on the same path, kind of think, oh, they're going through that, or they went through that, or maybe somebody can see that and think we should be able to help them in that way. So I think in that sense, there are lots of challenges for the interviews. And then obviously the own challenge of, gauging the mood of the room, making sure that your questions aren't callous or are not unintentionally offensive. And then you have to make sure that your own feelings aren't sort of seeping through and influencing the interview, because you don't want that to happen. You don't want your reactions to influence what the other person is saying. So kind of putting keeping sort of a stop to that, and kind of hearing that in a very sort of neutral, non-reactive way. That's also very tough in as far as when you're interviewing these women.
I think it's somewhere it's like a moral dilemma as well, right? Because you're making this video, and then you're like, okay, like you're making them say these things, tell their story, and then sometimes they're afraid of the consequences, and you have to take responsibility for that as well. So, and then it's just like, they're sharing their story, and I feel like शायद I don't know ऐसा feel होता हो, but मैंने एक फिल्म निकालनी है, उसके लिए मुझे इनको ये करना पड़ रहा है, but there's like a bigger impact that you're trying to create, and for that this is required, and it's just tough, like but you don't want to feel like you're exploiting them.
You don't, and it's so important, you have to make sure that you don't cross this line where you are just sort of monetizing on their misery, but instead you are sort of championing the cause, and you're sort of telling the story how they want it to be told. So you have to put yourself in that position, and kind of view the situation from their point of view, and kind of understand, how do I do justice to their story? How do they want their story to be heard? How the way I kind of tell the story, it needs to be told and viewed the way they see it, because that's their story. It's not yours. You are sort of, they're kind of they're being generous to you, allowing you to go forward with it.
Yeah.
So make sure, and I always kind of think, that you have to just kind of don't cross that line and kind of take that step back and think, am I doing justice to the story?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a dilemma. Even when I was making this current film, it's kind of like my constant dilemma is, am I doing justice to it? Am I doing justice? And my fear is that when they watch it, or whoever it is, if they watch it, what if they don't like it, or
and
what
they
if
feel like they've been wronged?
Yeah, what
in
if they
any
feel
way?
that they've been exploited? And that's like,
Yeah.
and I don't want them to feel that. And that's the last thing that you want. So that fear it's always there. It's always this internal fear. But the task at hand is there. Like you said, there's a bigger sort of picture over here, and your sort of job is, like my job is, to make them understand that and kind of make them view that. And the way you can sort of make them do that is just be connected to them, or be connected to the story you're telling.
Yeah.
Even when the story is finished, even when you take your documentary out, regardless of where it is, or if it's received like 1 award or 10 awards, or maybe if it's being talked on international level, keep them connected. Say, this is what's happening, this is what your story is doing, this is what people are saying, so that they feel like, we're relevant, we haven't been exploited.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important.
Right. So generally, when you find these people and these stories, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, tell me,
So
please.
how do you sort of like approach them, and how do you what is their general response? Do they expect something in return? Yeah. How does that go?
So the whole process around filmmaking also, is that what you're asking me? Like, how, other than what they ask, like how do I go forward with the filmmaking?
That as well, but before that, like, how do you get them to sort of
Agree?
or
Okay.
or what are their expectations? Yeah, do they, like I said, do they want something in return?
Yeah.
Do they suggest that? Or
So
I'm literally मैं ऐसा सोच रही हूँ कि आज मैंने किसी की जाके डॉक्यूमेंट्री बनानी हो तो like what would I say?
it's a
Just curiosity.
situation.
Huh.
I'll tell you that. So
Huh.
what's even funnier is that when it's been like 6-7 years now, but past, if I were to kind of go back, and the conversations that I would have to convince them, I play it back in my head and I think, what
was I doing?
What are you saying? Like, I would not listen to me if I were, because obviously, like, sometimes you just
Also,
wanna-
sorry, I want to add
Yeah.
more layers to my question.
Yeah, no, please.
Because there's also like, because what I see is that आपने मुझे एक ही example दिया, but and you said acid attack victims, so most of these are like from like rural areas and remote areas and smaller towns. So
Yeah.
obviously their thinking is different, their cultures are different.
Yeah.
So how do you remain sensitive to that as well, like when
Yeah.
you approach them? So that's another layer to approaching them and convincing them.
So when I have dealt with a lot of people, by the way, when I've contacted in regards to, so when I'm filming, what happens is that there's a lot of research that goes into the topics in the beginning.
Okay.
It's kind of sort of like when I'm looking for a topic in particular, the first step is kind of like, it could be a topic that was maybe talked about, but now it's sort of faded away. Maybe it's an issue that no one's ever heard about. Maybe it's something from current affairs. So then after that, what I do is I kind of look at who is in the forefront, what is being done to sort of curb this issue, what's been achieved, what more can the public do. So in this way, it's sort of like I'm kind of not only just creating awareness, but I'm kind of pushing for public engagement. So in this way, sort of look up and research, okay, this is the topic, we're doing it. And then after lining up the topic, it goes on to getting in touch with the people. Okay, so it's sort of like that is a very make or break moment, because, getting in touch with them, convincing them, telling them that, okay, by you telling your story, people who are also walking a similar path, what effect it'll have on them. It's sort of, I think, it's sort of a morality card that gets played out. So you have to sort of see, like, are they, willing to share their story? What is, and then you have to tell them where you're coming from and who you are and what you hope to achieve through this. Some people will agree. Some people, I've met some people who are so sort of genuine and sort of really just want their story to come out there and and then there are some people who kind of go like, what are we getting out of it? How much money are you going to be giving us? And what is that? So, I've dealt, and then there are people who kind of, and then I've even dealt with people who, who've said, things like, how is this going to, because I've also, filmed people who are, who've had, their cases going on, or they're trying to fight for their rights. And you sort of notice so many things. Like, there is a positive side to all of this, but there's also a very different side where you sort of see that how stories that are portrayed in the media are like, supposing you see someone and we're all sort of feeling sympathetic towards that person's cause, and then when you go and interview them, you realize it's not like that at all. And then you have to sort of think to yourself, what am I doing? Like, do I sort of keep going with this? But she's not being honest. So, but the whole world thinks that person is. So that becomes really problematic. And then
that's a tough spot.
Oh, that's terrible. And then, I remember there was one of the stories that I covered, which I never took out, by the way. It was, after I kind of interviewed, the person, and everyone, and this was a pretty popular story, and everyone sort of had a particular view about, her and what had happened in the situation. And I remember coming back and thinking, it's not true. It's not, because, I interviewed, when I conducted the interview, and after the interview, I thought to myself, this is what she's saying is not, it's not right. And there's certain things that she said and the statements she keeps changing. And you pick up on the fact that what you're kind of seeing in the news and how, different that is
from the reality.
Because I went in there thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. This has happened. I really want this story. And I really, really fought for that interview, and I got it. And when I did, it was nothing compared to what I had thought it would be. So then you realize that there are all sorts of people you deal with. There are people who want, to sort of get, something out of it. There are people who just genuinely want their story to be told just so that maybe their cause can be pushed forward. And those are the ones that I think that who I've met who've really changed my life, because the selflessness has made me think, it's sort of the cause that matters more than anything. And I think that was one of the reasons that I made this current documentary too, because, Shakila Farooq, she's the woman who sort of educates these hearing and speech impaired girls. She's so selfless, and she pushes, and she just wanted, she just kept telling me, tell their story. Like, I just want their story to be told. I just want this cause to come out. I just want people to hear it, because they're, and you start realizing how, maybe as human beings, how sort of selfish we are and how much we take things for granted. And I think it's through experiences and people like this that has sort of shaped how I think about so many things. But then you also see, the negative side of it all. You do. And, in that sense, it becomes very tough when sort of approaching these people, because there's that moral dilemma that you need to deal with.
Yeah.
And then there's that dilemma of, obviously, like, after all that convincing and getting them on board, is that the right story? Even after the end of the day, when you go and you get that interview, is that the right one is that the one that you wanted to do in the beginning? So yeah, in that sense, it's very tricky. I mean, getting it right it's tough. It's a gamble.
Yeah. So, okay. So I want to understand that generally, I don't know if there are any laws about this, but if you want to cover someone's story, you want to make a documentary, you want to make a film, anywhere in the world or here, या जो भी, या किसी की तरह की भी story, या documentary. So what kind of legal permissions, like, are they required? Are any legalities required? Are there any laws around it? Yeah, it's just like, if the person even verbally sort of agrees, it's fine. And are there like laws around, you have to compensate in the form of some money या कुछ, या ऐसा नहीं है कुछ भी? It's a free floating sort of thing.
Yeah, so abroad, I mean, I wouldn't know, but over here, it's kind of like, for the stories that I've covered, it's sort of like, do they agree, do they not? Or in certain areas, if they are very hesitant or they aren't sure, or so then you sign a contract, or you kind of tell them that this is kind of what's going to happen. It's always better to have everything in writing, always, because that sort of covers it covers you, it covers them, it covers situation in itself. You don't
Prevents misunderstandings and any kind of
definitely,
issues.
because there are so many misunderstandings. A lot of times what happens is that in that situation, people agree, and then maybe they're influenced by another third party or someone else who goes like, oh, you should now go do it, say it like this, or do it like this, or go this way, and get something out of the situation.
Yeah.
And it's better to have everything in writing.
And officially or technically, are you supposed to pay them? Yeah, that's just a ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं होता.
नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है. Like
it's not a like a money thing. It's just like people genuinely want to put their stories out there, and what if somebody says that I want money for this? Then what?
So then that all these discussions happen before.
Okay.
So before I go into getting that story of filming, so all of this is cleared out before, money, how, what it entails, who will be the interview, who's getting interviewed, what happens then. So everything is sort of sorted out. It's never that after everything someone steps forward and goes like paise ke din. So that's not a situation that
no, but I mean if people do like beforehand, if somebody wants money to share their story, is that something that's is that okay to do?
So till now, like, it's sort of like all the people who I've interviewed, no one has ever said that, we want money, or it's always been, we just want our story to come out.
And I think that sort of story में पर honesty और genuinity रहती है, because then you know that they're not making things up, or वो like you said कि वो story actually में different होती है, because वो वाली जो चीज़ है. I think when people sort of don't ask for money, it sort of shows that they genuinely just care about the impact and the story to be put out there,
to be told.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else you want to share? Any challenges you think that else you want to share with us के filmmaking में होते हैं, या कोई भी और thought या बात?
Challenges wise, I think mainly the ones that I've mentioned as far as interviews are concerned, and then obviously logistical support if you have to go to a different city. Safety is a big concern also. Getting people, making them understand that taking that responsibility, like we had spoken about, that's a challenge, because like a lot of these places, a lot of the interviews, a lot of the places I've been to in Lahore even, I think that was one of the most the ones that I was a little like, I wouldn't say afraid, I just say taken aback, because we went to brick kilns where people were trapped in bonded labor over there.
Achha.
And when I went over there, I kind of realized, because that was currently happening, in the sense that people were trapped there and they weren't allowed to talk about it. So we timed it in a way that we went there when the brick kiln owners weren't there. So that was very sort of timed. It was very sort of hide your camera.
Dangerous.
Yeah. It was like to hide your camera, make sure you aren't seen. As in, when you go and then take it out, make sure no one sees you with the camera, make sure. And then when we were there, then I remember one of the owners even showed up. So it was, at once everyone was sort of like, say that you're from an organization. So then, and this was back in 2018, I think. I was much younger than I was now. And I think at that time I was just thinking, this is serious, and this is, it's not all, it's not so safe, and I guess the concerns that I do have or did have were quite valid. But, like I keep saying, that when situations like this do occur, I think, I always felt that I wanted to just push forward more. I always thought that, this is
why I need to tell the stories.
Why are people hiding? Yeah. Why are we hiding? Why are we hiding this?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons I kind of thought that, it's not only inspires, it kind of pushes you forward. Like, I want to do this more. I want to uncover this more.
Yeah.
So, in the sense that challenges wise, but I think they have been, they've always been, personal challenges, internally, when you're always sort of not sure what you're doing, in the sense that you're always feeling like, what if I'm not telling the story right? What if? And then obviously, like, everyone is always has been throughout, like, questioning you, that are you, like, it's like a filmmaker, you're so young, what are you doing? No one takes you seriously. Even when you're talking on the phone, so when you show up, they're just like, wait a second, you? Like, is that this, you're the one who's heading this?
I get that.
So it's been a while sort of breaking out of that, but I think that every single moment has sort of has helped me push forward more and more and more. And that's kind of, it's tough and it's daunting, and at times you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, but you just sort of have to suppress that and push forward. And then you start realizing as you go ahead that, okay, this, it's making sense. I can do it. And I think we just have to keep fighting that internal voice in our head, because we are literally our own worst enemies. And I think that's a big, that's what we sort of need to battle. And that's the battle we need to win more than anything.
Okay, amazing. I love all the insights that you gave us into
Thank you.
This world of yours, and a lot to learn from you, Halimah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hamna. Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to add on top of your head, or you think pretty much?
I think pretty much that's it. I mean, as far as filmmaking and the journey and the challenges, I think that everyone can sort of take from it, and whether or not getting into it or not getting into it is concerned. I mean, I think people should know, when people say that there aren't enough female filmmakers, like some of the movies out there have been made by, some of the most popular movies have been made by women. Like, I mean, Matrix from 1999 was made by a woman. You've got, Salma, you've got Nomadland, you've got, so many movies that are made by women. American Psycho was directed by women. These are all, and these are all females who took a stand and went against the tide. So, I mean, why not us? And
okay, I have another question. So, so far, most of your work is documentary style.
Yeah.
And do you plan to do like other kinds of like stories, or even if they're true stories or they're real stories, do you plan to like recreate them sort of?
Yeah, like
rather than documentary style, like make movie style films.
Yeah. So
is that something you want to do?
So I had someone asked me a similar question like this, that do you want to get into film, like creating features? But so I see myself, I think, always sort of, I don't know, sticking to the documentary line. However, like you said, if it is something that you're talking about, like a movie that is based on reality, or like telling someone's story in that sense, I would be open to it. But my aim over here is to sort of tell people stories to the point that you can actually sort of, create that, that change, or so that ripple effect that ends up leading to material change. And whether that change can come through community intervention, or it can come through policy change, or anything. But if the story can facilitate in some manner, I think why not? But that is because that's where I see myself. That's why I got into this line to begin with. And if and whether it's creating a feature that is based on a true story that kind of makes you think, because you have stories that are based on reality, that are pushing for a certain cause or a certain purpose, and they want to sort of get people thinking about that, or get people involved in that, or so I mean, why not? If it has a purpose and a cause, then for sure I don't see why not. So because that's the reason why I got into this in the first place. So I mean, I don't know what the future holds, but let's
like
see.
There are two ways to tell a true story as well, right? Abhi jo Adnan hai, like about Adnan, who got freed after so many years from the serial podcast and everything. Rabia Chaudhry worked on his freedom. So, like, it's a true story. उसके ऊपर documentary भी बन सकती है, और उसके ऊपर एक film भी बन सकती है, जिसमें somebody else plays the role and puts that story out there. So I guess, there are both ways to
tackle it, definitely. And either way can make an impact. So
either
why
way
not?
can make an impact. I think the only difference here is that when you, I think, sort of make a documentary, you are reaching a different audience, and when you make a movie or film, you reach a different kind of audience. So I think it boils down to कि आपने किस level का impact या किस तरह का impact create करना है. If you want to tell a story that goes out more, that creates an impact more in a certain class or certain masses who may not have so much power in terms of creating policies, तो फिर आप इसको एक उस तरह की फिल्म बनाओगे कि जहाँ बेस नॉर्मल लोगों का, एवरेज लोगों का माइंडसेट चेंज करना चाहते हो. But when you make a documentary style, then you are pushing for like a scale on a different level.
But I feel like there are different ways to tackle an issue, and whether it is, and if you have the support, and if you have the and one way to do is making a film of it, then why not? I mean, if it's getting that same story out there.
Yes,
so,
depends on the end goal, right?
For sure, 100%. Yeah.
And then you can decide
how you want to go about it.
How you want to go about it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Halimah.
Thank you so much, Amna. Thank you for having me.
I hope this conversation was easy for you.
It was very nice. It was very nice talking to you. Didn't feel like a podcast at all, actually.
Chalo, I'm happy. I wanted to keep it casual. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Happy Chirp. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. Like, itni sari maze ki baatein and so much insight, and you're so well spoken as well.
Thank you.
Kept me constantly sort of engaged. So thank you for that. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? And I'll see you again next time. Allah Hafiz.